So thank you very much, everybody, and thank you very much for being here today. I've been tasked with giving you a brief update as to where we are with regards to the Link Clinical Trials Initiative. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the program, it is an international collaboration between ourselves and the Van Andel Institute in Grand Rapids, Michigan. It is a drug repurposing collaborative effort. And for those who are unfamiliar with the idea of drug repurposing, my apologies, something's gone wrong with my font in my presentation today, so if it seems off-center or askew, the fault is entirely mine. But with drug repurposing, what we have is a rather long and complicated process of getting drugs into the clinic at the moment, and it's an expensive process as well, going through preclinical testing, which takes 2 to 5 years, and then clinical development, which can take 6 to 8 years. So you're looking at 10 to 15 years of going from idea to actual treatment in the clinic. And with drug repurposing, what we can do is we can take drugs that we already have in the clinic, that we already have a very good idea of their clinical profile, and immediately take them to the phase 2 step. So there might be a drug that's being used in a liver condition, but the biology applies to Parkinson's. And what we can do is jump over the preclinical testing part and go straight into, and we already know it's safe in human beings, and we can go in immediately to phase 2 and cut 5 to 6 years off that development program. And CPT is also looking at making this process even faster by doing multi-arm studies. So instead of testing one drug at a time, testing multiple drugs at a time. And I'll come back to that later in this talk. And the Link Clinical Trials Initiative, as I was saying, is a collaboration between ourselves and the Van Andel Institute in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and it revolves annually around a meeting which is held at the Institute itself in Grand Rapids, Michigan. It's a 2-day event, and we invite members of a committee. We have got 20 of some of the world's best experts on Parkinson's disease, and they're led by this gentleman here, Professor Patrick Brunding. And these are some of the other individuals involved. Some familiar names here for folks here in the UK, Professor Roger Barker, Tom Fulton, who's sitting in the front row here, Dr. Camille Carroll from Plymouth. And the committee is asked to review a set of dossiers, usually 20 to 25 dossiers, that have of drugs that have displayed some form of disease modification with regards to Parkinson's. The dossiers contain everything we know about the drug. And what I should say is that it's a closed meeting, that you have to be invited into the meeting, but it's not only the members of the committee that are involved. We also have all the major stakeholders. We have some of the major organizations. Oh, this is not a very good, coming on an angle. No, okay. So we have some of the major Parkinson's organizations, such as the Michael J. Fox Foundation. We have regulatory and government agencies, such as the NIH. They've got representatives in the room. And then we've also got, most importantly, we've got the patient voice. We've got patient advocates. And all of these voices, I should say, have an important role in the meeting. It's not simply that the committee sits around the table and decides what drugs should be prioritized, but it's also a case of having a discussion with each individual member in that room. Everyone has a voice, everyone's allowed to give their feedback. The committee are the ones who ultimately vote, but often those votes are influenced by the discussion, the wider discussion that is had in the room. And the goal of the meeting, of course, is to prioritize drugs that we believe will have some effect or some influence on the course or the trajectory of Parkinson's. We're looking for disease-modifying properties in these drugs. So we all understand that Parkinson's is a progressive condition. Gradually over time, it's going to get worse. So what we're looking for are compounds that are going to either slow, stop, or reverse the condition, changing this downward trajectory. And once prioritized, the Parkinson's UK is mandated to get a prioritized drug into a clinical trial. And that has given rise to this amazing chart here of completed, ongoing, and imminently about to begin clinical trials. Each of these is a drug that has been prioritized by the committee, And we're about to go through them each individually now to give you an idea of how we are progressing. So the first set of drugs, these drugs can be grouped in some cases, I'm going to discuss are the Glp-1 agonists. These are drugs that are used for diabetes, but in preclinical data, there's a lot of preclinical data now suggesting that these drugs also have beneficial effects in models of Parkinson's. And top amongst these are bidurin, or exenatide, as it's more widely known. Professor Tom Falconer is here today. He's going to be presenting an overview of what we're going to be seeing with regards to the phase 3 trial coming up that has just been initiated, excuse me. But I will just take this opportunity to make one small statement. In 2017, the phase 2 results were published, and there was a general level of excitement with regards to this because overnight we found out that this drug was stabilizing motor features over time. And the community as a whole got very excited. We moved from this hypothetical, if we ever have a disease-modifying treatment, to potentially when we have a disease-modifying treatment. But with that came a very immediate rise in expectations. And a clinical trial should be an unbiased evaluation of a drug. We shouldn't go into a clinical trial with any sort of expectations. And so, really, I just wanted to say that we need to, as a community, all humour aside, as a community, we need to be prudent in this approach and manage our expectations going forward, because this is only the first of a set of phase 3 clinical trials that CPT is going to be setting up very shortly. So, I think it's important. In addition to exenatide, we've also got the liraglutide clinical trial. It's a phase 2 clinical trial taking place in Los Angeles. We have 60 participants in a 54-week trial. They've almost fully recruited now, and we're hoping to see the results of that trial in 2020. And a third GLP-1 agonist trial that CPT is involved with is liraglutide. This is also a phase 2 trial. It's a multi-center trial, however. This is a much larger trial being conducted in France, and it involves 158 participants being treated for 12 months, and the results of that should be available in 2021. Another way we're trying to slow or stop the progression of Parkinson's is by boosting the overall health of the cells by helping the cell clear waste. Cells, as part of their daily activity, build up a lot of waste, and in Parkinson's there's evidence that this waste builds up. And so what we're trying to do is help the cells to clear that waste and function more efficiently. And one of our leading projects in this regard is ambroxol. This is a commonly used drug since the 1980s. It's used for respiratory conditions, clearing mucus. But more recently, we've discovered that ambroxol can also boost the levels of activity of a particular protein involved with this waste disposal program. This protein is called glucocerebrosidase. And the Cure Parkinson's Trust, along with the John Black Foundation and also Van Andel Institute, have just completed a phase 2 clinical trial. That trial was called AIM-PD, and it is now finished. It involved 18 participants being treated for 6 months. And the primary aim of the study was to make sure that the drug is safe in our cohort of interest, our population of interest. I can tell you that the drug is well tolerated. The results, however, are embargoed, but they're going to be published very shortly. And I don't think I'm giving too much away by saying that we're very actively seeking next steps with regards to the development of this program. And I should add, that Stephen Mullen is here today. He was one of the key investigators with that particular study, and he'll be presenting this afternoon as well. Another drug that's potentially useful with regards to boosting waste disposal in cells is a cancer drug called nilotinib. Back in 2016, this drug caused a lot of excitement when a small pilot study demonstrated very positive results. It was open label, however, so now we're doing phase 2 clinical trials which are being conducted in a blind fashion. That means that nobody knows whether they're being treated with a placebo or with the treatment itself. And the results, the first part of this clinical trial are being analysed at the moment, and the results will be a determinant on what happens with the next stage in this program. And another drug very similar to nilotinib, another c-Abl inhibitor. Nilotinib is what we call a c-Abl inhibitor. C-Abl is a protein that gets very active, hyperactive, you could say, in Parkinson's. And so by inhibiting it, we're hoping to bring more balance to the cellular activity. And this is a biotech company called Spark, and they have set up, they're testing their c-Abl inhibitor called K706, and they've set up this large phase 2 clinical trial. It's involving 504 patients. It's multi-center internationally, 94 centers around the world. And we're hoping to see the results of that study in 2021. A third way that we're looking at slowing or stopping or reversing Parkinson's is to better support the energy, the power stations, of the cell. In almost every single cell of your body, there are these structures called mitochondria, and they provide your cell with the energy that it requires to do its daily tasks. And in Parkinson's, there's evidence to suggest that there's a bit of mitochondrial dysfunction. And so we are working with a biotech company called BioElectron. They have several compounds now, but we've been supporting them through one clinical trial, one phase 2 clinical trial, which is EPI-589. This was a study in 44 patients with Parkinson's, and the results are being analysed as we speak and should be published soon. And they have as I was saying, they have other compounds as well that we're keen to see into clinical trial very shortly. Closer to home, we have UDCA. This is a readily available treatment that's used in the clinic for dissolving gallstones. But more recently, some researchers up in Sheffield University have demonstrated that UDCA has very beneficial properties with regards to mitochondrial function in models of Parkinson's. And so we've set up a 48-week clinical trial, called the UP study, UDCA in Parkinson's, which is involving 30 patients, and that trial has just about reached full recruitment, so it's another positive step forward. And finally, we have a series of drugs that I'm just going to put into a singular basket, which I'm referring to as neuroprotective. And leading the bunch here is simvastatin. This is a cholesterol-reducing drug. So this is another case of drug repurposing, where we have a drug that's clinically available. It's used readily and widely for lowering cholesterol in people. But there's also been preclinical work which has suggested that this and drugs of its class have beneficial effects in models of Parkinson's. And that's led to a phase 2 clinical trial of 230 odd people being conducted across 23 hospitals in the UK. It's being led out of Plymouth University by Dr. Camille Carroll. That study is fully recruited, and we are expecting to see the results in 2020. In addition to it being our 15th anniversary, we've got a lot of these clinical trials finishing next year, so it's going to be a very, very big year for CPT. Deferoprone is another potentially neuroprotective treatment. As we age generally, we have a build-up of iron in our bodies, and in Parkinson's disease, what we see is a build-up in the areas of the brain affected by Parkinson's. And so one way of testing whether this build-up is actually being toxic for the cells is to clear that iron. Preclinically, the results suggest there would be beneficial effects here using what's called an iron chelator to remove that iron. So a phase 2 trial has been set up across France, Canada, Germany, and the UK, and with 140 people involved, and they are being dosed twice daily for 9 months. And again, this is a study which we're hoping to see the results of in the new year, or later in the new year, I should say. I don't want to raise expectations. And then we have another drug called neurotriptyline. This is an antidepressant that is quite readily used. And Dr. Annette Schrag is here today. She's going to be presenting with regards to this study, the ADEPT PD study, so I won't steal any of her thunder. I'll just mention it briefly here. And finally, we've got the azathioprine study, which is an immune suppressant. So this is a drug that dampens down the immune system, and it's used for inflammatory conditions. If you consider that in Parkinson's, the immune system is going to come in and get rid of the sick and unhealthy cells, and it's pretty ruthless in doing this. It doesn't ask questions, it just comes in and takes anybody sick away. So one way of actually slowing the progression of Parkinson's is to go in and dampen down the immune system and let those sick or unhealthy cells actually have a chance to recover. And this study here has been set up in Cambridge, and it'll be starting early in the new year. It's going to involve 12 months of treatment and a further 6 months of follow-up. One of the big major highlights of 2019 has been the initiation of what's called the Australian Parkinson's Mission. This is a $30 million Australian dollar clinical trial, which is being supported by the Australian government. And they are part of that program is to conduct some large clinical trials. And the first trial that they're going to be conducting is one of these multi-arm trials I was talking about before. This is a phase 2 clinical trial which will be evaluating 4 of the LCT prioritized drugs, in addition to a placebo arm, over 60 weeks. And there'll be 60 people in each group. So there's going to be 300 patients in that particular trial. And this is just going to be the first of the Australian Parkinson's Mission studies. We will be closely working with them with regards to the follow-up studies as well. And before I finish and stand aside for the main event of the day, I'd just like to quickly give a brief summary as to what happened at the Linked Clinical Trials meeting this particular year in 2019. We evaluated 20 compounds and 5 were prioritised by the committee. Of particular interest, however, was that this was the first year where the benevolent AI collaboration that we had with Parkinson's UK came into effect. 3 of the 20 compounds were selected by the benevolent AI algorithm, this machine learning approach to sorting out drugs that might be beneficial for Parkinson's. And now we're actively seeking to get the prioritized drugs into treatment, into clinical trials. So with that said, I'd just like to summarize by bringing your attention to the fact that we have a number of clinical trials now that have come to completion, and the results are about to be published. We've got a number of clinical trials that are going to be finishing in the new year. We have a number of clinical trials that are proceeding according to plan, and we have a number of clinical trials that are about to start. And this is only what we're able to put in the public domain at the moment. We also have a number of clinical trials that are being set up. And so with that said, I'd like to thank you very much